The Rita Cosby Show. Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Breaking news.
And tonight on The Rita Cosby Show, it is another big primary night in America. Races in Alabama. There's a House special election in California. The District of Columbia, there's a real socialist there running for mayor. Georgia and Oklahoma. And so far, most of the big results are coming in so far from Georgia. And it's kind of a mixed bag for President Trump. First off, on the GOP Senate primary, Mike Collins, who was Trump-backed and endorsed big time, handily won over Derek Dooley, the former college football coach. And Dooley was Governor Brian Kemp's pick. Trump again picked Congressman Mike Collins. He handily won that primary, and he is going to take on Jon Ossoff this fall. The Democrat, of course, from Georgia in the Senate there. Also, Raphael Warnock, too, is the other senator. But Jon Ossoff, a lot of people view as one of the most vulnerable Democrats up for re-election this year in November. So that's a big seat. So if Mike Collins can take out Jon Ossoff in the elections, that would be a +1 for Republicans, and that would be a big deal. And obviously every seat counts, and obviously control of the Senate and keeping it is a very important deal for the Republicans. So President Trump just endorsed, I believe, Mike Collins, I think on Sunday. And it's interesting. Mike Collins has done some great work, pushing, of course, for the Laken Riley Act and a number of other things. And again, it's a big sign because President Trump took him. And on the other hand, Derek Dooley, the challenger, was picked by Brian Kemp. And of course, he and President Trump have not always seen eye to eye, but this was clearly a win for President Trump. Then there's some other news also coming out of Georgia in the last few minutes, everybody, and that is Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones. He was backed by both President Trump and also Governor Brian Kemp. They both backed this guy. He is projected to lose the Republican runoff for Georgia governor to a healthcare executive and billionaire, Rick Jackson. And so that is not good news, obviously, for the president and for Brian Kemp, who both endorsed Burt Jones. President Trump saying that maybe he made some mistakes in the runoff earlier in the week, maybe, being told that this person was the best one and then finding out later somebody else was. So that's interesting, too. So there's some mixed reactions there. And clearly right now, up 1, -1. But we'll see because the night is young. And obviously a lot of eyes, as I mentioned, on the mayor race in D.C. because President Trump said if it turns out to be a real loony-kazoony hardcore socialist, somebody who's been running there, who's had a habit of making some comments like, oh, you don't need any curfew, we should reduce penalties for crimes. This clearly looks to me like a very big soft on crime candidate. And if that person wins, and she's typically ahead in a lot of the polls, but we'll find out tonight. President Trump said, boy, am I going to keep my eye on Washington, D.C., because it's going to need a lot of help if she gets in. And we'll keep you posted as results come in here on The Rita Cosby Show. Meantime, a lot of talk about this terror threat. We're going to get to that tonight. This is darn right frightening. This coordinated drone and sniper terror plot that was foiled by the feds, thank God, with suspects in Ohio, also in California, Nebraska, and some other places, a coordinated attack. And a 19-year-old, his mother essentially turned him in, said, I'm really worried about my son. He spent $3,000 of graduation money on weapons. He's doing target practice. And he says he's got some plot, something in the works. Didn't know specifics, but she was deeply concerned enough to call the local authorities. They then called the FBI. And thank goodness, because this would have been a mass casualty event. This, to me, is the nightmare scenario of somebody with other individuals. There's maybe as many as 24 people, 23, 24 people. And the scary thing is, it looks like it was being plotted. It was being planned. And thank goodness it was busted. But can you imagine they were trying to do explosive via drones at at that UFC fight event that we were talking about the other day that just took place on Sunday night. And then people would run, and then there would be snipers on the building taking people out. I mean, that's a horror scene. And then that was phase 1, and phase 2 was to storm the White House. I mean, this is like a scene out of a movie. And these were young people. Apparently, so far, they don't have criminal records, and they look like they may have just met online recently, sharing this sort of anti-government belief, the belief that the government's bad and capitalism is bad, sort of this Antifa mindset. And this is really frightening. It is a wake-up call to America that these people are plotting and planning, and strangers are meeting strangers with like-minded, twisted beliefs. And sadly, that seems to be happening all over America. And by the way, I had a great day today, everybody. I won my 11th Gracie Award, which is pretty cool. And most importantly, I love the fact that it was from an amazing, amazing group that does so much. It is the Alliance for Women in Media Foundation, and they recognize women. There's not a lot of awards for women in broadcasting. This is probably one of the only ones, and it's the biggie. And I got it for Best Talk Show. So very neat. And it's for the show that I also do with John Catsimatidis. It's Cats and Cosby. And it's an amazing show. If you haven't heard it, I hope you tune in on 77 WABC. But it won Best Talk Show in the country, which is very, very cool. And there was a whole bunch of women. It was packed. It was like 1,000 women today, and a few guys who love us and support us. But it was a great, great crowd. And it was an honor for me to be picked. There were so many great, amazing women in TV and radio and print, and a lot of student broadcasters, too. And you know what? This is when I learned that I've been in the business a long time. I had all these young kids come over to me, and they're like, I grew up with you. Rita Cosby, I grew up with you. I love you. I wanted to be like you. And I thought, oh, my gosh, how long have they been watching me? Have you been watching me since you've been in diapers? Because if that's the case, I have been around a long time. But anyway, it was just a real honor. And it was nice to see some future budding broadcasters and some other ones who have been around for a long time, and women recognizing women. That's always awesome, you guys. And so to me, I was really thrilled. And the show that John and I do, and this show, I am blessed every day to be with all of you. And it makes it so much fun. And how great to get paid for what you love. 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. Meantime, President Trump today talking about the deal. And he says the deal is done. And he says that J.D. Vance is going to be going over to Switzerland. He's going to be there for the signing ceremony. And he says it's about 1.5 pages or so, and it has a lot of these details. It is opening up the Strait of Hormuz. It is ensuring that they won't get a nuclear weapon. Then we're going to spend about 60 days after that to get all the details. The devil, of course, is in the details. And boy, when you're dealing with Iran, that is a devil. That is for sure. And, you know, I think it's still going to be a bumpy road. Thank goodness President Trump cares and wants to make a difference and has pounded them into submission to this point. But my prediction is it's going to take a little bit more pounding. I have a feeling they're going to probably break it within a few minutes or a few hours, not because it's President Trump, because it is Iran. And you just can't trust Iran. But here is President Trump, because I applaud him, because it is a very different deal than what Barack Obama and other presidents, many tepid ones in the past, have done. Here is President Trump saying what's on the table and what's at stake.
Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. And it says it loud and clear. They're not going to develop it. They're not going to buy it. They're not going to do anything with it. And if they do, they suffer unbelievable consequences. Not just a little bit like, I won't even tell you the consequences, but the consequences are the ultimate consequences. And with that being said, I hope we have a very good relationship. But the biggest thing is they will not have a nuclear weapon. And that's the reason I got in, and that's the reason I agreed to sign. And we originally had, Marco was with me, and they originally wrote that we will not develop a nuclear weapon. I said, no, you're not going to develop it, you're not going to buy either. So we have, that took another couple of days of time. Everything was, it's ridiculous, but So they will not develop, purchase, buy, or any other thing. They're not going to acquire a nuclear weapon. If they do, all hell will rain down on them, and they're not going to do that.
Yeah, they might try to test it, but President Trump will unleash hell on earth. That's the big difference this time around. He also says there will be no U.S. funds. There does sound to be like an Arab reconstruction fund. So a lot of people are taking issue with that because money's fungible. You get it from somewhere. Who's to say that the Iranian regime is going to use it for anything other than building up their military might? So there's still a lot of questions tonight. And I want to hear from all of you guys on this. But I applaud President Trump's courage and cojones that took us to this point, which it has never gone to before with any other past president. You think about in modern times, they've all said, yeah, we want to do this. We want to, Iran is a big threat, but they do nothing about it, just words or 1.7 billion pallets of cash in the middle of the night. That's what happened under Barack Obama. And here's President Trump saying that when they get the memorandum after it's signed, he says he will read it. He might even do a news conference and read it word for word and take questions. So take a listen.
But I'll not only release it, I'll probably have a press conference and read it to you word by word so that the press covers it accurately. Because it's a very important document. And unlike Obama, who could have destroyed the Middle East with a horrible JCPOA, it is the worst agreement. That was a road to a nuclear weapon. Mine is a wall against a nuclear weapon. I mean, I see these people say, but we already had one. That was the words. He paid a fortune for it. We paid nothing.
And yet the Democrats, they are like completely undermining President Trump, and I believe undermining America. I mean, they don't seem like they want America to win. It's like, okay, well, President Trump hits them. How dare you hit them? President Trump does a deal with them. How could you do a deal with them? It's like, they would say, okay, today isn't Tuesday. They would try to convince all of it. Today is not Tuesday. I mean, they are off their rocker. Listen to Senator Brian Schatz. Here are his comments because he said there's a reason that President Trump so far is not putting out the deal. The deal hasn't even been signed yet. But he says there's sort of a private secret reason why. Again, listen to Democrat Brian Schatz.
On the so-called MOU, I just have one basic question, which is, if this deal is so good, why can't the public see it? Even without all the details, here's what we do know. Donald Trump hasn't made anything materially better. Things have gotten worse. 13 service members dead. 3,000 Iranians killed. Tens of billions of dollars, maybe hundreds of billions of dollars in 3 months. And prices spiked everywhere. Gasoline, utilities, fertilizer, groceries. Everything is more expensive. And despite all of that, none of Donald Trump's original objectives have been met. He wanted to annihilate Iran's military capabilities, and that has not happened. He wanted to abolish their nuclear ambitions, and that has not happened. Any agreement on nuclear weapons still needs to be negotiated and is very unlikely to be better than the original deal under President Obama. He wanted unconditional surrender from the Iranian regime, and that certainly has not happened. They're still there, they're more radical, and they are more emboldened. He wanted to liberate the Iranian people, and that has not happened either. There is a reason they are not publishing this deal, and it's because it makes plain that this is one of the biggest foreign policy blunders in many generations.
Murphy.
It's interesting. Senator Brian Schatz. First of all, I had to look up where he's from. I know most of the senators, but this one's from Hawaii, and he's been there for a while. That's how unremarkable he is. But I also was looking and thinking, I don't remember hearing from him when Biden withdrew from Afghanistan and all those soldiers were killed at Abbey Gate. because of the way, that haphazard way that they withdrew. I don't remember him criticizing Joe Biden at that point. Am I missing something? I don't think so. We'll take your calls when we come back. 1-800-848-9222. And you are listening to The Rita Cosby Show.
The Rita Cosby Show. Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
It's The Rita Cosby Show.
And let's go to your calls tonight. Let's go to Joaquin in Pennsylvania, line 4. Go ahead, Joaquin.
Good evening, Rita. Oh, God, you're going to I'm sorry, you're going to hate me.
Never. By the way, that is not possible. You know all the calls I've taken from Stan and Fuzzy Teddy Bear through the years, and I still love them.
I know you do. And believe me, you know what? I like Stan, too. I like all these guys. And even Russ, who hasn't been on the air much anymore.
Yeah, Rusty Russ.
I want to hear everybody's point of view, but I'm going to say one thing. I can't help but see that this whole Iran deal is going to be exactly what that guy said, Brian, whoever he is.
Brian Schatz, the unremarkable senator from Hawaii.
Yeah. You know what? I'm so sorry, but they're going to have that argument to throw up, you know, and I just feel bad. I think that Trump has been manipulated into something, you know, and I love him. I love him so much, our president, you know, but I think that he's been manipulated, and I worry about the people of Iran. You know, they've suffered so much.
Now, let me ask you, Joaquin, do you believe that people have said, okay, it's time to pull out because of gas prices or for whatever reason? What do you believe?
No.
What do you believe is?
No, I believe that we should have just devastated that regime. Okay, we should have taken the Straits of Hormuz, you know, and there, one way or another, we should have taken that regime down completely, you know, and the people of Iran, because I've watched the videos of women, you know, from Iran talking about, you know, how much they've suffered under that regime, you know, and so I'm sorry, regime change should have been on the table, you know. And the other thing that bothers really tonight that made me call in was that conspiracy at the White House. Oh
yeah, do me a favor, Joaquin. Hold on, because we'll get to that. Do you mind hanging on? We got to have a hard break here. I want to hear your thoughts on that. And by the way, I do agree. President Trump should have pounded Iran to the dust.
The Rita Cosby Show. Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Rita Cosby is on. The Rita Cosby Show presents Back the Blue.
And this Back the Blue segment coming from Grant County, West Virginia. While after hiking on Chimney Top Mountain, a man was lucky to be rescued by state police helicopters. Now, Chimney Top is a popular hiking destination in West Virginia with amazing views and awesome rock formations. The victim was located in very difficult terrain and injuries requiring urgent care. Thankfully for air rescue that came in also, by the way, from nearby Maryland, they were able to immediately respond and deploy a helicopter to the call. And flying over the area, searching from above, the crew spotted the hiker while local rescuers and EMS teams struggled to reach him through the steep wilderness. They did an air hoist rescue, and in this regard, the crew on the helicopter coordinated a way to save the injured man from above. A rescue technician lowered down through a clearing in the steep wilderness. They confronted and then they found the victim and were able to extricate him. That victim was then taken to a local hospital and is expected to make a full recovery. Wow, very courageous and very dramatic. Thanks to our great men and women in blue who work on the land, sea, and in this case, from the skies. And everybody, we're going to continue with Joaquin in a moment. But first, here's a little bit more about this deal with Iran. J.D. Vance is the one who's going to be going to Switzerland to do the official signing ceremony. That's on Friday. And he fired back today. He was on with The View and elsewhere. This is him on Fox News. And he fired back at President Obama for saying that this is just like his deal or even worse. I don't think anything could be worse than Barack Obama.
Obama took a shot and said, I don't think this deal is any better than the deal we had before. The JCPOA was dramatically different than what you were describing here tonight.
And I'd ask the president, the former president, I'd say, Obama, why in the world, if it's the same thing, why is it that the Gulf Arabs hated your deal and they love our deal? They are the ones who are in the region. They know what it means to enrich the worst terrorist regime in the world, and they also know what it means to turn over a new leaf and to go to a different future. So I think President Obama, he should acknowledge that the people who are closest to this, they love the Trump deal. They hate the Obama deal, and that's maybe the biggest endorsement of this plan.
And yet, if you listen again to the Democrats, I played the comments from Senator Brian Schatz. Listen to the guy, of course, accused of stolen valor. This is Senator Richard Blumenthal, Democrat of Connecticut. And he had to weigh in, of course, because anything that has Trump's fingerprints, he can't take.
This memorandum of understanding, the president now says that he's going to hold and brief the press and read it word for word to the media. It sounds like before you guys even get briefed. Do you think you are going to get briefed on this?
What's striking here, Kate, is the secrecy. No one in the United States Congress, not even his closest allies, like Lindsey Graham or the majority leader of the Senate, have received any briefing. When he says he's going to read this document, certainly he might well, because J.D. Vance, the vice president, yesterday told Jake Tapper it's a page and a half long. Now, you can't sell your house with a contract a page and a half long. I've settled cases as a prosecutor and litigator for the most minor kinds of disputes, and they require way more than a page and a half. The JCPOA was hundreds of pages long. So what we have here, essentially, is a reopening of the strait with talks vaguely designed to be ended in 60 days, but no clear path to stopping a nuclear-armed Iran, let alone toppling the theocratic regime or annihilating the missile capacity or the military capabilities of Iran, or stopping it from funding the malign proxies like Hezbollah. And after all of the costs, after all of the taxpayer burdens and the increase in gasoline and grocery prices, for what? So this kind of magical thinking, I think, is going to arouse a lot of skepticism and opposition, because the everyday American cares less about the stock market than what they are paying at the pump or at the grocery aisles.
Again, I don't remember Richard Blumenthal critical of Biden pulling out of Afghanistan, leaving billions of dollars worth of equipment and surrendering the Bagram base, which has now been taken over by China. I don't remember any of that. It was like, oh, let's move on. Joe Biden's spry as a cat. And yet, of course, because it has anything to do with President Trump, they will be critical. And to me, they're undermining America. There's this very virulent sort of trend that we're seeing, undermining America. And it's happening also, as we're seeing, with a lot of young people. And I believe a lot of the rhetoric that is coming out of the Democrats' mouth, where they're calling Trump a tyrant or a Nazi. Meanwhile, they've got Graham Plattner with a real Nazi tattoo. But yet the rhetoric is so incendiary and so dangerous. And one of the things that was just stunning, and I want to definitely hear from Walken and all of you about this, this is this planned terror attack at the UFC White House event. So far, they have busted just a handful of people. They believe there may be as many as 24. And it's so scary because, thank goodness, this 19-year-old guy, Tyson Proper, he is from Ohio. And thank goodness his mother said there's something kind of fishy about my son using $3,000 of his graduation money for weapons. And he's online with these strangers and very incendiary language. And the son was being very cagey about planning something, but wouldn't say what. And thank goodness the mother called up. And I firmly believe a lot of these other past cases that people could have called up and didn't do the right thing. And thank goodness she did, because apparently she called up on the 10th. And we know that that event with President Trump on his birthday and so many others, that happened on the 14th. So 4 days later, thank goodness. And then they got into the Signal chats and they saw all this communication. And apparently he was online with strangers. How scary is this that he got online with strangers like back in May and suddenly became, attracted to people with like minds. The whole thing about saying he didn't like anybody associated with Epstein, didn't like AIPAC, the Jewish lobby, total anti-Semitism, anti-capitalism, all of these different issues. And so here is J.D. Vance, the vice president, talking about this. The news just broke, and here he is talking about just how concerning this is and what he says may also be fueling the flames.
There's a lot going on behind the scenes with the FBI.
Sure.
We don't always find out. Why do you think they're telling us this now, and what's your reaction?
Well, I think they're telling us because the scale of the plane attack is so significant, and I think it's important for us to be as transparent as we can be about these ongoing investigations. We want to tell the American people what's going on, of course, but I actually just heard about it this morning myself, and so this is a very, very dark stuff. And unfortunately, we're talking about this a little bit off camera, but this is what happens when people turn the rhetoric up so loud that disagreeing with somebody is a cause for violence. That's the place that we've come to, unfortunately, with too much of our political rhetoric. We got to tell everybody to tone it down. And I hate to say this, but it's true. You see more political violence and violent rhetoric coming from the left than the right these days. Everybody has a role to cut this stuff out. But I think a lot of my Democratic colleagues in Washington have got to look themselves in the mirror and say, why is so much of this political violence coming from our side of the spectrum? Maybe they can do something different.
Well, Mr. Vice President, this is a clear escalation. We know about the president, attacks against him, you and the rest of the cabinet. Those threats are public.
Yeah.
But this is going after the supporters. The people that were on that line was UFC, MAGA supporters, and they were the target here.
Yeah. Well, and thank God this attack was apparently thwarted or never got to the point where it was carried out. I mean, the event was so amazing, the sense of patriotism, the pride that everybody felt. It was a very fun evening. So this could have been a very terrible tragedy, but it goes to show why we have so much appreciation for the guys who keep us safe and for federal law enforcement, because these are the types of attacks that they're preventing every single day. As you guys know, they don't get the credit for the attacks they prevent. Right. They only get the blame for the attacks that actually happen. And so I think it's important for us to recognize that for every bad incident, there were 100 bad guys who were trying to do something worse. And thank God we've got smart and good people protecting us.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness. And thank goodness that mother called up, because this was a coordinated attack. And again, you hear sort of the planning. They were planning apparently drones with explosives. And then the crowd of about 4,000 people would scatter and then head into these directions, which would almost come into a line of snipers. I mean, this is really frightening. And that was phase one. Phase two was to storm the White House after that. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of security. I've been to the White House many times, and there's a lot of security, the snipers on the roof, and a lot of things, not necessarily that these people would have gotten any further. But God forbid they had set off some explosions. Things could happen. Sometimes if it happens so quickly and so many of them, who knows what would have happened? It's downright frightening. And to hear the rhetoric from some of these people and some of the comments that we've seen of what they have said online, it almost makes you think a little bit like they're listening to some of the rhetoric in politics these days, particularly on the Democratic side. It really is frightening, like almost like word for word. You're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I recognize that phrasing. I recognize that comment. And here's a little bit. This is from the DOJ when they put out the information today. This is from the mother of, again, 19-year-old Tyson Proper. He's the one whose mother turned him in and said, hey, you guys have to take a look at this. I'm concerned what's happening to my son and what he's planning. Very courageous, but obviously did the right thing, saving many, many lives. And according to the Department of Justice, she said when she asked Proper what he was doing, he said he couldn't tell her exactly what he was doing, but that they were looking at multiple different locations and intended to conduct recon as well as hit and run missions. Propper's mother believed hit and run missions meant conducting shootings and then leaving. I mean, what a terrifying thing to hear your son is doing that, and that was the plan. Thank goodness she did the right thing. I bet you there's a lot of people, sadly, out there that might not. Because a lot of times when you see these crazy things of what's happened, whether it's this guy, a 19-year-old, even younger, and school shootings and things, it's like, oh, yeah, the guy was nuts. But the parents or somebody else didn't want to turn him in, or a neighbor didn't want to turn him in, or whatever the case is. Thank goodness this Ohio mother did the right thing. 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. Let's go back to Joaquin on line 4. Thank you, Joaquin, for waiting. Thank you.
Oh, Rita, please remember, I am your wingnut job, so disavow yourself for anything that I'm going to say. I love this president more than you know, okay? I've looked into him. I read his resignation letter from the Reform Party, Ross Perot's Reform Party, because David Duke's got in there, you know. And this man's heart is in the right place. But I think that he's been threatened so much that he's being controlled. So this whole Iran deal, I don't like it, all right? But as far as this whole thing goes with this planned attack at the White House, I cannot believe when I hear people say that these guys are far right wing. I'm tired of hearing that stuff because you know something? These are all leftists. I'm really holding my tongue back from saying that F word, you know?
Yeah, hold the tongue back.
Really
By the way, the more we hear about them, I believe you are correct. And that is because, and they also seem to be Antifa. Like, some people are describing them sort of like, just this violent strain of wanting to overthrow the government. Obviously, they also didn't like Trump. They didn't like what they said was someone associated with Epstein, even though Trump is the guy who kicked Epstein out of his, Mar-a-Lago years ago.
Exactly.
Right. It's like, but it's parroting these messages out there. And that's why I go back to some of the parroting that's happening from young people and others that are susceptible or deranged. And they listen to some of these crazy things from politicians. And who was it? Was it Hakeem Jeffries who said, we gotta, make them feel the pain. We have to take them over. It's war. When you hear that kind of rhetoric, and we certainly heard that from Tim Walz and Biden and so many others and Gavin Newsom, that kind of rhetoric is inflaming people that are troubled. And then they say, oh, we gotta take over the government. We got to take this government out. I mean, that is so scary. And the fact, I think one of the most chilling details in this, Joaquin, today, first of all, it's so frightening because there were so many important people at that event, including, of course, the President of the United States and his family and others. But in addition to all of that, is that this guy goes online apparently in May. I think the father said to the Department of Justice that his son just started going online in May on these sites and suddenly kind of was befriending weird, strange people. I guess somehow we saw some of the rhetoric or the son told him, I'm not sure which, but this is, it's June. This is not like, right. In other words, he just met him, like he met these people last month and he's planning a mass attack.
It makes no sense. And you know something else? As far as all this hoopla about the UFC at the White House, guess what? Donald Trump is Teddy Roosevelt reincarnated because you know something? Teddy Roosevelt had boxing matches and wrestling matches at the White House, and he participated in them personally, okay? And that's a man who got shot while he was giving his speech and then stopped the crowd from lynching the guy and continued the speech until he was done.
Right.
Okay? So President Trump is Teddy Roosevelt reincarnated, and anybody who wants to say that he's doing the UFC at the White House, guess what? Teddy Roosevelt did that, and West Wing, whatever the hoopla is over that, Teddy Roosevelt was the one who decided that we needed to have a place for dignitaries from around the world who come to this country, to have a place to enter, So Trump is just carrying on the Teddy Roosevelt tradition.
Yeah, and he looks up to Teddy Roosevelt as he does, many of the presidents. And listen, it was a spectacular event. I'm not surprised to see that some nut, was drawn to that event because it was such a high profile event and talked about for so long. And the president was going to be there and all these other who's who. But it is frightening. It is downright frightening. And it's a great reminder and a sad reminder, obviously, that this president is constantly under threats for speaking his mind and standing up for what he believes in. And in many ways, like you talked about, the modern day Teddy Roosevelt, but it's a very courageous message in so many ways. And they hate him for it. They absolutely hate him for it because they see that, he's beloved and the American public overwhelmingly voted him in. They hate it. And he continues to say, I'm doing what I believe. Too bad. And he's pushing, even some of the quote unquote rhinos, if you will, in the Republican Party, too, as well. And they don't like it either. The deep state doesn't like it either, Joaquin, but he continues to forge ahead. Joaquin, thank you so much. It's always great to hear from you. And I will never consider you a wingnut, ever, ever, ever. 1-800-848-9222. And you're listening to The Rita Cosby Show. We'll continue your calls when we come back.
The Rita Cosby Show. Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This is The Rita Cosby Show. Breaking news.
And just in, some updates about that B-2 bomber that crashed during a test flight at Edwards Air Force Base in California. Really chilling news. It descended at nearly a mile per minute. Wow, a mile per minute before slamming into the ground, according to newly released flight tracking data that is providing investigators with an early look at the final moments before the deadly crash. The bomber was airborne for just 3 minutes and 15 seconds before it crashed, killing all 8 people on board. They say at this point, they do not know the cause. We do know on the plane, on the bomber, it was Air Force personnel, government contractors, and 2 Boeing employees participating in a test mission that they say was tied to the aircraft's radar modernization program. So as we get more details, we will bring that to you. But what a very, very sad situation. Again, all 8 people died on board, and very frightening to hear that it descended about a mile per minute. And if you look at it, boy, it is just heartbreaking to see. It looks like there's barely anything left of the wreckage. And one of them was a father of 2 very, very young kids. The mother came out, the wife, and was saying today, and this is kind of chilling, it kind of intrigues things, saying that there were plans to have them do a test mission earlier, then it got delayed a few days, and it got delayed a few days, and delayed a few days. So maybe there might have been something wrong with that aircraft. Why did they keep delaying it? Was it weather? Was there something else?
Thanks for listening to The Rita Cosby Show. You can hear The Rita Cosby Show weeknights at 10 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?